Oops. Update title. Alright. Sorry about that. Got disconnected again. And that lost my mind. Lost my mind. Music and art. No. So I'm just trying to... No, not errors. Oh my gosh. Stuff. Alright. Trying to get back and set up. Hoy, boy. Always something going on. I like my connection went down for a half second, it felt like, but everything else just crumbled. I got to figure out if there's a way either. So I'm using Restream to stream onto multiple platforms, and usually it's working like a charm. I mean, it's not Restream's fault, actually. It's pretty much my fault. But I don't know how to... I don't know how to either on OBS, which I use to actually do the streaming, or on somewhere else, or on Restream or something similar, just to get it so that if I do have a slight outage, I mean slight outage, that and all my titles and everything, it just to get it to keep me alive. Keep the connection alive, as it were. Trying to make sure I get everything back updated. Hoy. All right. So I'm sure I lost everybody who was in here before. Again, apologies. Apologies for that. Hopefully you will find me again if you're on here before. 1,000 apologies all. Let me reset the room and reset everything just to make sure. So I'm going through the D30 Sandbox Companion in the first part of the stream, which will show up as a different stream. I'll try to do something to link them together potentially. I just covered the intro to the D30 Sandbox Companion, which essentially amounts to just them covering why they're using the D30 die, what the D30 die can do for you, and then just some different ways to read tables, and then some of the worksheets, which this one, which I'm looking at right now, Hexcrawl worksheet is number 1. So we really didn't get too far, which I guess is good. So we hadn't gotten into the meat of it, but now we can return to where we were. So we had a Hexcrawl worksheet. I like that it has a wandering monster area. You can fill those up. I even like that it has a little, well, one, it has 4 of them, right? So you can have different areas. I talked about another video about having regions. So you can set these up with the area. You can call that a region. So you can have the Tulgi Wood back there somewhere, and in the Tulgi Wood, you can have, Jabberwocks and Bandersnatches and those kind of things. You can write them in there. You can have it on the list. You can also set, you're checking every X amount of turns. You can, if you want to have different, rates of checks in different areas, you can do that. And obviously you can have different lists. And then you can have your key locations set up, your cities and castles, your settlements, strongholds, dungeon ruins, so on and so forth. All nicey. Then we have a settlement worksheet. Put the name of the settlement and it gives you all the details about that. Even has a vendor shop list, right? So you could put your vendors, how many vendors there might be of different types. You could throw them in there. I want to say this this grid is maybe a little bit harsh. I would have liked it. It's just such a the inner grid is just, gosh, it's just very dark colors. I find those hard to draw in if I was going to print one of these out and draw on it, without it becoming hard to see my lines versus the lines of the squares. And So I would have maybe liked it if the squares were that inside the grid, the grid inside the box area was just a much lighter gray, so that I could kind of use it as a guide, but it wasn't just so in my face. But otherwise, a nice setup, key locations, notes, good stuff. We have an NPC record sheet, so you can write down your NPCs as they come up, which is good. And here we get to the first actual table for generating adventures. Use as many or few of these tables as deemed appropriate for sparking ideas for adventure. So let's see. So, okay. So I guess this is what they're getting into with the title. So just as kind of a layout feature, right? So this is Adventure Generator Table 1. And then in the columns, each one of them has, the table name, abbreviated colon, I guess that, or the overall generator name, colon, the table. So we have AG1 trigger and so on and so forth. So we have a trigger, a major goal, obstacle to a goal, a location, and a location feature. And for this one, we're going to be rolling a D30 for each of these. So just the kind of default way you would do it. Let's see. So I could just, do I have a die roller handy? I could just roll some dice. Let me see. Where was that? I had a roll a die. Here we go. All right. So I had a roll a die site up, which I linked in the chat in the other stream. So I will post it again in here. So in the chat, and I will post it in the show notes as well when I get a chance. But for now, let's see. I can send that in. All right. So hopefully you got that. So I'm going to roll a couple of these D30s. So the first D30 roll is 14. That is a message. So we got message. And I rolled a 3. Break curse affecting location. 13. Find hidden/lost location. 22. I should have probably wrote these down. Stronghold. 3. Bridge. Okay, so the trigger was, and by trigger, I think that's probably your plot hook, right? What is triggering this adventure? They got a message. And the message was asking them, begging them, pleading them to, which one was it that we got? It was something to do with the, I knew I should have written these down. I'll just roll another D20. So we get a message. The message says, ooh, stop a villain from amassing power. All right, so we get a letter. The PCs get a letter, potentially for some kind of contact that they have. And the contact is asking them, begging them, please, please, stop this villain. Stop this villain from amassing power. And obviously we wouldn't use the term amassing power. We would, we would figure out a way to, what that means for us, right? What does amassing power mean in terms of our current game, right? So we got that part. Now, the obstacle to that, and I'm just going to roll these again just because I can't remember what I rolled the first time, is a long journey. So what makes it difficult? What is the thing standing in our way from just stopping said villain from amassing power? Is he's far away in a remote location. He's got a stronghold up in the mountains. He's down in the Underdark. We could probably think of a lot of places where potentially he could be, but it's somewhere remote. So the main problem is not just the villain, it's going to be getting to the villain. And that location, that's going to be a tough way to get to. I just rolled again, is, well, it's just a town. After all that, it's a town. But maybe the town is far away. It's on the other side of some horribly difficult natural or unnatural barriers. And then finally, something that features a library. So we could think about how the library is going to figure into the adventure. But those are things that actually the party doesn't really need to know of up front, right? They really only need to know as far as getting it started is you got the message, you got to stop somebody. Where are they? They're in the, you can, find a town on your map or generate a new town and say, hey, they're here, but it's far. It's far from where you are, or it is in some place that's going to be a difficult journey. And then once they get there, you can maybe think about as that's happening, well, how does the library get into it? Maybe the town is famous for its library, and this guy is holed up in the library. Maybe there's some tome in the library, which they've taken that's enabling them, right? So maybe some forgotten something or other that was just hidden there or not. And right, off we go. And as you can see, there's, 30 times 30 times 30 times 30, you got a lot. You're going to get a lot of different combinations if you just roll these out. And of course, if you don't like something, just pick one from the list or re-roll it. Maybe some of these make more sense to you. Maybe you look at these triggers, you see dream, and that's something that is a part of your campaign or something that has that you think, oh, well, this PC's been having dreams. Maybe I can work that into the dream, right? You don't have to make it all random, but if you need that inspiration, then you've got it. So that is the first bit. Here we get another one. Oh, maybe this is a continuation. So we can add these to the other one. So we had a villain trying to amass power. It's going to take a long journey to get to a city. The city's going to feature a library, and there is a phenomena involved as well. And I rolled a 10, which is a fever. So we could think about maybe some kind of disease or other condition. Maybe we could think of, what is this fever doing? Does this fever cause people to act in weird ways? Does it discombobulate them, or just what's the word I'm looking for? Not decapitate, but just knock them out, essentially. Incapacitate, thank you, is the word I was looking for. And now we can roll again. We can get a goal for our villain. Enslavement, right? That's an easy one. He wants to amass power, and he wants to enslave folks for some. Well, that's the goal, right? Enslavement is not really a reason, I would say. We could think about why they want to enslave folks. It seems like some of those ones, if we're looking at this list, the first few, well, it's kind of mixed, right? Amusement/boredom is a reason. Avoid loss, pain is a reason. Corruption, it could be a goal or a reason. Debt owed is a reason, I guess. So there's a mixture of sort of reasons and goals. You could probably roll on this a couple times if we wanted to think about, well, why does he want to enslave folks? Roll again. We got a 16. He hates them. So maybe this is, we're in human lands. Maybe this is not a human and they hate humans, so they want to enslave them. Maybe if this is a dwarf, we could think about what city we're placing it in. If it's a city that's not human, maybe this is a human person that wants to enslave them for whatever reason. But we've got some motivational factors. We can roll to find an artifact or relic to tie into this. I rolled 18. That's an orb or a sphere. So we can think about in the library, right? In this town, maybe that was hidden in plain sight, perhaps, or perhaps it was protected by folk. There was an orb or sphere, and maybe that orb or sphere, when used by this individual, it generates that fever. Maybe the fever causes them to be enslaved. Frederick Gork says in the chat, did it for the demon babes. Yeah, it's always an option. Always an option for the demon babes. Demon babes are, that's like like in Pootie Tang, right? The demon babes. And then we can think about a theme if we want to think of a theme to tie in here. I rolled a 5. That gets us Doom. So that's a good one. I mean, that kind of fits, right? We've got fever, enslavement, so a Doom makes sense as far as how, if we want to thematically kind of tie this together. And then we could think about maybe what a key NPC is involved. I rolled a cleric, which makes kind of perfect sense in the situation. Fever, disease, right? Some kind of enslavement, doom. A cleric's, maybe this is a maybe someone is trying to impress a succubus or some other kind of demon, male or female, and a god of good has a cleric on the case, right? And that cleric becomes a key person on this quest, or theoretically it could be an evil god's work or chaotic god's work, in which case maybe the cleric is an antagonist, kind of a sub boss of the ultimate person or individual or creature who is doing that. So just rolling through this once, I think we got a really pretty good adventure seed there. So, you can use this whenever you need something, and certainly you can use it for, I feel like what I just went through could be a whole campaign. Could certainly, if you get stuff that's on a smaller scale, you can look at it as, side quests or just things to fill the rumor mill with, that sort of thing, but useful. All right. Now we get to some prevailing weather conditions. So that's quite a jump. So we went from adventure generation to weather generation. I really like these charts. I love to throw weather in there. I think it's just nice. I think it just adds to the dynamism of the world. It definitely changes the conditions of things. If your party is just, they feel really comfortable just kind of camping out under the stars, so to speak, and then you start throwing in some rainstorms. And I like to play it if they want healing, that they have to have a campfire, and you can't have a campfire if it's pouring outside, so you got to find stuff. You got to find places to rest during their travels. You might have a higher chance of getting lost. You might not see things from as far away if there's lots of noise and lots of mists or just rain just obscuring things. Things that might be out might be in. You might have a hard time finding tracks, but you get to refill all your water canteens if you're in somewhere that maybe not have a lot of water, and just regardless of the reason, I like having it. So, but I will say that some weather generators are not easy to use, and I usually gravitate now to the ones that are online that just generate the thing for me. But it's always nice to have these offline type versions, because if you're ever in a crunch, or you're somewhere that doesn't have internet, or whatever the reason, you've always got these to lean back on. So let's see. We got some instructions here. First, 1 is based on climate, terrain, and season. Then 2, we're going to determine a specific temperature. And then 3rd, we're going to determine any precipitation events, which is on the next page. So let's go through this. And I have my D30 generator here on the side to roll some dice for me. So first of all, we're going to get the average daily temperature and precipitation class by location and time of year, which if you're looking at this, you have the table. We've got on the columns the seasons and then the months underneath, and then in the first row, or the rows, will then have essentially which location type, I don't know, biome, habitat. So here they've split it up into tropical, subtropical, temperate, subarctic, and Arctic, which gives you a fair amount. And then within those, they have the different terrain types inside those. So you have tropical hills, tropical mountains, tropical forests, etc. Subtropical hills, subtropical mountains, subtropical forests, etc. Right, for each one of those. So that's gonna cover pretty much everything you're gonna need. I figure if there's any edge cases, you can just pick one or take the two next to each other. If you have a forested hills, you could probably split the difference between forest and hills, something like that, right? It has enough. I feel like you can figure out where you want to get to. So the instructions say this chart presents weather data for the PC's location. Cross-reference the location's climate and terrain against the current season and month. Values relate the average temperature as Fahrenheit, Arabic numeral to the left of slash, and one of 5 different precipitation classes, Roman numeral to the right of the slash. Average temperature is used to determine temperature below precipitation class is used on the following page. Okay, so we've got that. Now, to determine the temperature, we have 2 methods. First is a simple method. The temperature indicated on the table is used as is, without any changes, fluctuations for the entire 24-hour period. All right, so first, let's just say we are in temperate forests. I roll a 9. So I would go down to find temperate forest. Or actually, I'm not even, actually, I'm not even rolling yet, right? Never mind. I don't even have to roll yet. Temperate forest, and I could just pick the month. So if I'm in the spring, middle spring, that would be 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the average temperature. So you'd think, afternoon, mostly a little bit hotter than that. Evenings, somewhat cooler than that. If I wanted to use the advanced method, I would use, so the temperature then indicated would be the median temperature of the day, and the low and high temperatures vary from the median temperature by the amounts below. Okay, so they're basically giving us those amounts. So you can either just say, okay, it's 60 degrees outside more or less and go for it, or you can look down and say, okay, I'm in temperate. I'm in the, I picked the 5th month. So I would go look on this little table. So I go to temperate. I see 5th month. That would make the low would be 45 degrees, which is 60 minus 15. And the high would be 75 or 85 degrees, rather. So there you have that. And I would usually just, vary that up probably a little bit anyway. And then they even have an optional mean temperature variation, which they explain the mean temperatures may be adjusted on a daily basis by rolling a D3 or D5 per below. And then you can get some variations within that. I mean, look, unless your party is carrying around things to capture, detailed temperature data, right? To me, I just need that range. So probably the simple would be all I would need. Yeah, I can roll some extra dice, or I can look at that. It's about 60. So I wouldn't even say 60 degrees. I would say it's fairly warm outside. It's a warm spring day. To me, would be 60 degrees. If it was up at 85, I would say it's pretty warm, or it would be hot. And then, cooling off and fairly cool in the evenings, or even, bordering on cold. I mean, if you've ever gone camping, I went camping once, and it was in the summer, but I think it was either late spring or early summer. But where we got, the temperatures got down to about 40 at night, and for camping, it was cold. It felt like it was a lot colder than that, right? So I would just use those terms. But obviously, it's good for me to have more detailed information in our heads. But anyway, so you take this number that we got, and I'm going to go find mine again. So I had temperate forest in the spring, middle of the spring, 5th month. That gives us 60, and it also gives us this other number, a 4. Now, nothing says wind strength would be more useful than exact temperature data. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, yes, because that is something I would like to talk about, the winds and then kind of what's coming. We'll see what's happening with the precipitation, because usually I try to think of the winds as far as how it's pushing or pulling, whether towards you or away from you. But yeah, wind strength would be good. Maybe it's here on another page, but so we had 4. So I have 60, Roman numeral 4. So we're going to go to this next page, and here we're going to get precipitation. So now we're on weather events by precipitation class, and we're going to use that with the other table. I had rolled, or I had not rolled, I had chosen for my month, it was precipitation class 4. So it looks like here we're going to roll some dice. Sounds about right. So now I rolled a 9. So I'll just use that roll from before. That puts me in a single cell. A single cell storm. I don't know what that means yet. I should probably read the directions first. Let me go ahead and read this. So we're going to determine daily precipitation. On the precipitation table, we're going to roll 1d30, which we already did, against the column matching the precipitation class. That's done. To determine the type of storm. Based on the result, follow the directions for that storm type. Okay, so we got single cell storm, which will have about a 20 to 30 minute duration. And then we will roll now on this single cell, non-severe cell table. Some of these abbreviations are going to throw me off. Anyway, we're going to look at the non-severe storm cell table. So I will roll another d30, and I got a 30. And here you get your wind. So nothing, we do get some wind. Excuse me, Acrobat, why are you putting that menu where I don't want it to be? Ugh, come on. Let me just, can I, oh, you know what? Is it, that's what it is? Hold on a second. Why is, okay, there we go. It's gone. Okay, so 30, got 3.5 inches of rain. 8, wind is 8. I'm not sure what that means. Solid and hook. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so we do have on the side, we do have what these things mean. So, for rain or mixed precipitation, the number indicates total precipitation for the duration of this cell, or for each 10-minute period during a supercell. Okay, we're not worried about supercells at the moment. Ours was a single cell. For snow, the total is doubled. Okay, so we did get 3.5 inches of rain over this 30 minute storm, which actually seems like quite a bit. I'm not a weatherman, but I think usually when I hear thunderstorms whipping through, and I've checked to see what the precipitation we're going to get is, usually it's not as much as I imagined, but 3.5 sounds like a lot. So it's going to be a heavy rain. And then we do have the average miles per hour wind speed for the duration. Okay, and then gusts up to 3 times. So averaging about 8 mile an hour winds, but with gusts as high as 24 miles an hour. Solid denotes the size / amount of hail, sleet. Solid precipitation is ignored for snow conditions. So this is going to be, okay, so it's heavy hail / sleet. So it's kind of freezing. We could think it's hail / maybe freezing rain. So that's nasty. And then the hook is a chance in 30 of a hook formation spawning a tornado. Severity of tornado relative to base chance in 30. E.g. a 5 in 30 hook equals minor damage. 30 in 30 hook equals widespread devastation. Wow. All right, so there is a fairly good chance, and I'll just roll one. Let's roll a D30 just to see if we're going to get a tornado, and we roll 9, so we would get a tornado. So that definitely adds a cool extra flavor and an obstacle to this, is we potentially would have a tornado that would whip out sometime during this half-hour long, very severe freezing sleet / hailstorm. So not a nice piece of business that the party would be running into at that point. And so that was just a single cell storm. You could get a multi-cell cluster that's not severe. And we would determine the amount of cells, determine the individual durations, determine the individual effects, and then determine the breaks after each cell. So it seems like the cells is kind of a storm unit. So you think about when a storm might roll by, you might get some heavy weather, then maybe there's a break, and then it comes, another part of it comes through, right? So you have these gaps in the storms. That seems to be what the multi-cells are. Or you could have a supercell, which looks like it's a much longer storm that is, it's not intermediate, right? It's not in bits. It's just one solid front coming through. So it seems like there's a lot of, it's fairly detailed, obviously, and it's pretty crunchy, squeezed into these 2 pages, but you can get a lot, it seems like you can get a lot of different things out of it, right? So we can use it to generate a lot of interesting weather events, which is the point, right? Oh, I don't know why you're doing this to me now. Oh, hand tool. Yes, back to the hand tool. Thank you. Okay. No, nothing says this weather table is no joke. Roll this up ahead of time. Yes, that's always a good thing. If you've got time, maybe take a week or 5 days or 3 days and roll it up ahead of time. It's nice because then you can think about how these things will relate to the travel. And of course, it saves you work, because if you're in the middle of stuff and then you want to roll for another day's weather and you're using that one and you start to get some of these things like, oh, there's a storm and oh, I got to roll a storm. You know, it could be send the players on a break time, right, while you roll up weather. So yes, roll some of these up in advance if you have the chance. Okay, here we have an off-course determination table. I know somebody asked me about getting lost in one of my other streams. So here is something you can use to determine how they're getting lost. This is probably more granular than I would normally get, but you've got it. So I'm losing my voice again. Okay. I'll take a little drink there. Eric Hanscom says, just need to make sure that they don't change terrain types and rolling up future weather. Yes. And you got, yeah, so you, right, if you're going to roll up stuff in advance, you have to be aware of where they're traveling, where they're moving. Because, yeah, they could have, if they suddenly zig or you think they're going to zag and you rolled up weather for the plains and they went into the hills or vice versa, right, that could throw you off. So yeah, you got to kind of, I mean, usually I feel like usually you have a pretty good idea of where the party's going, but of course here we are and going off course, which means that they could be heading in some direction, they get lost and suddenly they're off course. The other thing you could do is, and I usually will take this opportunity if your party is talking amongst themselves or they're stopping for the evening or whatever, and they're trying to figure out their next game plan, that's where you can sort of get ahead of some of this work, right? So they're moving along, they've got some kind of decision point or something has come up and they want to talk about it. I usually will give them some time to talk it out, and then while they're talking that stuff over, I can jump in and say, okay, here are some things I need, and I've got maybe 2 minutes or 5 minutes, 10 minutes even sometimes or more. You can use those gaps in time to game plan ahead. If the PCs have gotten lost or gone off course, as determined by the rules edition being used, roll for the party's new direction of travel, as outlined below. The method is, first, we're going to total the impairment on the PC's navigational/mapping ability, per the impairments table at the lower left. This total impairment value determines which off-course determination table is used. We have a mild impairment, a moderate impairment, and a heavy impairment. And the difference is how much off-course they could get. So the mild impairments was at 45 degrees, essentially. The moderate impairment is 180 degrees, and then heavy impairment is 360. So you can think about it like I went through on my other hexcrawling stream, right? If they have some landmarks, but maybe they're obscured, and we'll go through their impairments table. They might not have, they might be able to hold the course in a more general sense, but then they can be getting off course on a more fine-grained level. Potentially they've lost sight of things altogether, and you might say, okay, well, they still kind of have a general, they know where the sun is going, so they can have that east-west axis, so they're going to kind of stay within there, but then there's still a very broad axis what's getting lost, or they could be totally befogged in some way, in which case they could get spun around completely, right? So let's see what they have for their impairments. So they have mild fog, moderate fog, heavy fog, drunk mapper or navigator. If they're navigating by the stars and the sky is overcast, and then moderately obscured or completely obscured. If there's light precipitation, moderate precipitation, heavy precipitation, and then if they're on the water, if there are winds. Those are all things which we can reasonably expect. If these things are happening, it's going to affect their ability to navigate. Then we have some roll adjustments, another table. If the navigator or /mapper has quote-unquote direction sense, I guess they'll get some bonuses depending on the type of impairment. And if they're familiar with the locale or the route, they can also get some bonuses. So we have some stuff that's going to make it harder. We're going to have some stuff that's going to make it easier. What you'll do is you'll add up the impairments and you will compare it to the table. So if it's only impairment, if they're only impaired 1 to 3, you're going to use the mild impairments. If it's moderate, or if it's 4 to 7, you're in the moderate, and if it's more than 8, you're heavy. So if you think about what kind of things might cause you to be in a heavy impairment situation, right? So we'd have, if it's heavy fog, you're there, right? That's +8. That's going to put you in heavy impairment. However, if you're heavy fog, but you're familiar with this location, you've been on it once or twice, that would move you from heavy impairment to moderate impairment, assuming nothing else is happening, right? So then you would roll on your 1 to 30, and then you would get the degrees kind of off course you are. And this is another one where I might have thought it might be helpful just to kind of use the hexes kind of. So we have, they're showing a hex map here, but the degrees, I would have rather just used, maybe even made it more general, where you could kind of see the path on the hexes that you could go on, just to make it a little bit easier. Because I don't know, again, if on a hex map basis, I don't know if I need specific degrees. That's probably a little bit more a little bit more detail than I want or that I need, but you've got it. You know? So, if you need to figure out how your excuse me, if you need to figure out if your party's lost, how lost are they? Here's a table to help you with that. Now I've got a foraging and hunting table. Foraging, okay, so number to the left of the slash equals chance in 30 of one character searching for 2 turns. So that'll be exploration turns in the wilderness. I'm not sure if it's, because exploration turns in a dungeon are 10 minutes. But I would think in the wilderness, maybe it's an hour. And I don't know if I've actually seen any hardcore rules or set in stone what a turn is in the wilderness, but I would put it to hours. That's me. I want to put it in minutes, go for it. But I don't know if I've seen, someone please post if they've seen somewhere an actual turn, what definition of an exploration turn or a turn in the wilderness is, because I don't think I've seen one. And if they search for 2 turns, their chance of searching for 2 turns to find 1 full day's rations. I would assume that's for 1 person, right? So 2 turns for 1 day's rations for 1 person. Number to the right of the slash is the chance in 30 for the find to be both nutritional and safe to consume. Maximum number of foraging attempts equals 2. Characters with some kind of proficiency in foraging check in 1 turn instead of 2, and they may make up to 4 attempts. Okay. So the first thing is just finding stuff you can eat. And the second one is the chances are this stuff is actually not bad for you. That's on the foraging part of the table. Now on the hunting part of the table, we have the chance in 30 of a quote-unquote non-proficient hunter encountering game per 4 turns spent hunting during early morning or late evening hours. Hunting at night is impossible unless they're able to see in the dark. And we've got a modifier here, -3 per additional hunter in the group, but each hunter gets a roll. -3 per roll for hunting during quote-unquote off hours. Proficient hunters roll with a +3 bonus. So your rolls get worse because presuming a bigger group means you're making more noise, you're not as able to hunt, but each hunter gets to roll individually. So if you have a big group of hunters, you are what you're giving up in that each chance is harder, you're making it up for having more chances to roll. I'm not sure what how the odds work with that. 300s would put you at -9, but you'd get 3 rolls instead of just 1 roll. I don't know enough to know. I guess they said it was 3.3%, so you can kind of figure out. So you're what, 30% less likely to find something? That's about right? Yeah, because 10, 30, right? So you're a little bit less than 30% less chance, but you're rolling 2 additional times that way. So you can figure it out. So again, it's broken down by the overall biome, and then habit/habitat, and then the terrain. So you have tropical, hills, mountain, forest, etc. Subtropical, hills, mountain, forest, etc. All the way to Arctic. Again, we have columns for each season, and we've got then the results for foraging and hunting. Eric Hanscom says, I use a movement point system on my hexcrawls, and foraging takes 1 movement point and hunting takes 2. An unencumbered group gets 3 movement points, 4 if they push. Seems to work okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that kind of stuff. I guess I can ask you, and you can type in the chat. Do you adjust those for different terrain types, or is it really generic, just regardless of terrain, it's 1 point? Or is it take multiple points for different terrain types? So, for example, if you're in the plains, does it still just take 1 movement point per thing, or and then in the mountains is it still 1 point, or is it then it takes you 3 points for 1 whatever? But yeah, it sounds like an interesting system. I'm all for stuff that lightens the cognitive load while still providing the kind of detail that you want. So let's just stick with it. So we were in the spring before, we were in temperate forest, so we will stay there. So if someone goes a foraging into the woods, they've got a 27 out of 30% chance to find something. And that makes sense. I live in the Northeast, in the woods. I see tons of, and in the plains in those areas, right? Tons of berries, tons of mushrooms and fungi, lots of stuff like that. But of course, a lot of that stuff isn't good for you, but you can find it, right? So yes, that makes sense. 27 out of 30 chance you're going to find something that at least seems edible, but an 18 out of 30% chance that it actually is not toxic, not poisonous, and nutritious, which also kind of makes sense. So an over 90% chance you're going to find something, but a little bit over maybe 60% chance that it's good. And then if you're hunting, you have about a 50% chance of finding something if you spend about 4 hours in the right time of day or night hunting, right? Makes sense. We can go now to another table they have on this page, which gives us a game type. So we would roll some dice in this case. I rolled a 21, so we found some medium-sized game. We run into 1 to 6 individuals, and they're 60 yards distant. And let's see what they say here. Hunting characters must possess, first, a proficiency with missile weapons, missiles with range to cover the distance, ability to cause, quote-unquote, average amount of damage per shot required by the size of the creature. So small is just 1 damage, medium is 2 damage, large is 3 damage. So that's very kind of system dependent, right? But just about anything, if you're in a D6 system, means you're going to have an average of 4 or 3.5. So that's enough to take down any creature, but you have to have the range. So here we got something at 60 yards, which means that if we had something that was not at that range, did not cover that range, then even though we found something, we couldn't actually get to it, which is interesting. Eric Hanscom says, easy, medium, and hard. Easy is 1 movement point per hex. Medium is 2. Hard is 3. Okay. I like it. Sounds good to me. And then we have a hunting success. We're going to roll an initial D30 referencing a column per the first one, hunt 1, which is the game type. And then we roll twice more, referencing both rolls on column indicated by number of hunters. The larger result is the number of missiles used. The smaller result is number of game killed. Okay, so we rolled medium 1 to 6 at 60 yards. So I'm going to say, let's say there was 2 hunters. First roll is 16. Let's see. 16, that says 4. And then the second one, I rolled 26. 4 and 5. Am I reading that correctly? So that scene would indicate that we used up 5 projectiles, but we did take down 4 animals. And there was 1 to 6 of them, so we're within what we were looking for. And we can figure out what medium game would be like. I don't know if deer. I guess deer would maybe be medium. Deer, a boar or pig maybe. Wild pig. We can figure that out, right? If we want to, or we can just hand wave it and say, okay, you guys got so many rations because you took down 4 of these creatures. I always like these. Natural features and phenomena by terrain type. For each sublevel hex, roll a D30 to determine if there is a variation from the normal terrain found in the containing Atlas level hex. Chance in 30 for variation noted at the header of each column. If a variation exists, roll an additional D30 to determine the variant feature or phenomena. So, if you've ever been wondering, and I've gone through this in a couple of my videos about, hey, we're going through forest. How do I keep it interesting? What differentiates this piece of forest from the pieces of forest that they've spent the last 3 days going through? Here you can roll on these tables to find features to make it interesting. Sometimes they can be just for flavor. Sometimes they will create obstacles that the party has to deal with. You can combine them with wandering monster checks to create more unique encounter areas. Lots of stuff you can do. So the couple things they have on this table. The column titles are for the terrain you're in. So we got hills, mountain, forest, plains, swamp, desert, and coast. Then they have the chance that there is a feature there. So if you just wanted to roll, like they're saying, hey, they're entering a new subhex, we're going to roll to see if there is a special feature in there. You can roll. And then if there's no special feature, then it's just essentially your average type of terrain in there. If you roll within there, in any chance, then you would have one of these features. If you just wanted to roll a feature, of course, you could just skip that part and roll, right? It's your table. Use it however you want. So generally in hills, there's a 6 in 30 chance there's a feature. Mountains, it's 10 in 30. Forest, 8 in 30. Plains, 4 in 30. Swamps, 17 in 30. Deserts, back to 4 in 30. And the coast, 9 in 30. So it looks like the mountains, oh no, swamps have the most chance of having a feature in it, followed by mountains and plains having the least. I'm not going to go through all of these. I will keep going using my forest example. So we'll roll a couple things in here to see what's going on. So first, just in case, I'm just going to use a roll to see. I got an 8 in 30 chance of a feature. I rolled a 10, so there's nothing. In the next hex, I roll a 2, so they went through one hex of this forest, and it was just your average forest. There's nothing going on. I don't roll any wandering monster checks. They might move through it, right? That might be, it actually might be if I'm at 6 mile hexes. I'm not sure if that would be, it might be closer to a day's travel, but let's just say they started in that hex. They moved out of that hex sometime during the day because they didn't just start at one end. They were already, say, halfway through. So great. So I rolled a 2 for the next one. So now in this hex they're entering, we're going to get a strange or interesting natural feature. Or, just something. I don't know. Doesn't have to be strange. Doesn't have to be interesting, I suppose. I rolled a 16. So I go down to 16 and it's a lake. So with something like a lake, it's not going to be a huge lake. It's not going to be Lake Superior. It's not going to be a giant lake because that would show up on your hex map. If you have a big lake, it should show up in your features. This would be, I think we've all seen them in different areas. It's larger than a pond, smaller than an ocean, right? Smaller than a Great Lake. So we've got a lake. And then we can, if I had rolled a wandering monster check, maybe I would think about that's where I would put it. And then I could speak to not only them coming across, how is the forest changing as the forest nears the lake? It might not. Sometimes the forest goes right up to the water and it's just water. Sometimes there might see little streams or rivulets that are then leading, little brooks that are kind of leading to the lake, which I might put in. Maybe the ground gets damper, gets a little bit of a swamp, almost a swampy character. Lots of different ways I could do that. And of course, if I rolled a wandering monster, maybe the wandering monster, if it's an animal, could be that they're seeing the animal. Maybe the animal lives in the lake. Maybe the animal is getting a drink at the lake. Maybe the animal's an ambush predator and that's where it looks for prey when prey comes to drink at the lake. Or it just happens to be there. That just happens to be where you cross paths, etc. There's a lot of interesting ways you can use this. In the chat, Eric Hanscom says 6 mile hexes are still huge. You use ready reference sheets to add variations, right? Yes, that's usually my go-to, but just because of issues with the current rights holders to the Judges Guild stuff, I don't like to recommend them anymore, which is where something like this D30 Sandbox Companion comes in, because it's something you can use instead of ready reference sheets. But yes, I do like that one. So that was forest. We can look down and we can see a whole bunch of different things we could get here. We could have gotten a grotto. We could have run into heavy underbrush. We could have gotten a primeval forest. Maybe it just seems more ancient and just more massive. Rock outcroppings, rock shelters, rot, a sinkhole, some kind of spring, a hot spring, a sylvan grove. I mean, think of if there are, fey kind of creatures, they might be there. A well, that sort of thing. And then we have there's an asterisk at the bottom that says 50% this feature houses a lair, which is great because lairs are awesome and lairs are ways in the wilderness for the party to find loot. And of course, what's living in that lair? Is it there when they get there? Will it come back while they're digging through and trying to pull out stuff out of it, etc. And they have another note that at least some things are highly flammable and susceptible to combustion in the presence of flames, which can be kind of a fun thing to play with if the party's moving at night, or if there's some kind of accident, or if they launch an ill thought of spell. And we get these sorts of things for all the different terrain types. And here we have some features that they explain. So if you need help, if you get something you're not sure what it is, you can come here and you can see, because some of the names they use are maybe not in the vocabulary, like a barraquois, which is or I don't even know if that's a barraquois or a barrachois or a barracois. It's a coastal lagoon separated from the ocean by a sand or shingle bar. So if I'd gotten that one, yeah, I totally would have had to look that one up. Aha, here we go. Settlements and inhabitations by population density. I'm not going to go through this one in super detail, right? But you get, you need a settlement. Maybe you need one randomly. You've got, they'll give you some types by population density. You've got special, they have special types for terrain. So in the hills, you might have military outposts. In the mountains, you have a mine. In the forest, you have a logging camp. Plains, nomad camp. So you can think of those. There are some special types by population density. So in dense populations, you might have manors and peasant longhouses and military barracks and bathhouses. But in unsettled lands, you might have just a hermit, a trading outpost, a prison, or a nomad camp. So some nice things here if you need to generate some settlements or some information about settlements. Ruins generator. So you can get things like hovels, garrisons, cities even, and the degree and the character of the ruinations. They can be burned or charred or disfigured and vandalized or sunken or multiple things. And then there's a degree that can be just slightly charred or severely charred, right? And then you can roll for inhabitants from chimeras to undead to lycanthropes to mold slams and jellies. And then, how many of these are there generally? If it's just a nuisance, maybe there's just one chimera in a corner, or it's overrun by slams. And we also get some chimeras. They give you some examples: harpies, centaurs, minotaurs, medusae, that sort of thing. Bob Mossdole asks, do you use table rolling apps, online Chartopia app, Inspiration Pad Pro, or Tablesmith? I do. I don't use table rolling apps usually, so I've used Ready Reference Sheets. I've used some stuff in here. I've done stuff myself. I will usually use something to roll the dice for me. In this case, because I don't have a D30 hanging around, I think I've checked out some of those apps, but generally the apps I'll have to look out. I think I've looked at Chartopia before. I'm not sure about Inspiration Pad Pro. Maybe I'll have to look that one up. But I find often that I don't have the desire to, I already have stuff, say, in Excel or on pieces of paper or in other things, and I haven't gone through of wanting to put them all in an app. And then oftentimes the apps aren't for the systems that I'm using. So like, here we have stuff for 5th edition, but I'm not running 5th edition, so the tables aren't that useful to me. I will check those out again, because it's been quite a while, because I kind of looked at them, I want to say even 8 years ago, and just kind of didn't stick with them, because I just found they didn't fit my style at the time. But maybe I'll have to revisit. Bob Mostel, put in the chat like which one, if one of those apps you favor, kind of what you like about it, because maybe I'll take a look. Maybe I'll take a look on the channel. So we got a lot of stuff here for your ruins. We have a temple generator. Always could use temples, ranging from tabernacles to basilicas and beyond, even giving you temple styles from cyclostyle, which is round or / domed but without columns, to amphirostyle, which is columns along the front and back faces. So you get a lot of, again, inspiration if you need to come up with a temple on the fly. Like, your party goes into a city and you may talk up, there's some temples, and suddenly throw out, I want to go to the temple of so-and-so, and you think, well, there's going to be one here, but I don't really know what it is. You can roll and get one. Who doesn't need a cult generator? Here you go. And apparently it can generate over 24 million unique cult variations. All right. Let's roll. I got to roll me a cult. Well, let's do it. The name of the cult is, I'm going to write this in the chat too, so I can keep track of it. Okay. Blank of blank. Is it going to give me an actual name, or am I going to have to come up with the name itself? All right. So I'll hold off on the name. Let's just roll. So the type of cult, I got 4. All right. So the type, cult type is a church. All right, now next we're going to get a theme. Cult theme I rolled a 7, is Desolation. They worship, I rolled a 25. They worship Alamia. Cult worships a Alamia. Let's see, their immediate goal. So right now we have the, let's see, I don't know, what would you call it? What, anyone in the chat have anything? A church desolate Lamia? Let's see. What would so I think of Lamias in I know in Greek mythology, the 8 kids. So the church, I'm just going to be super on the nose for this. Church of the Desolate Kinswallower. All right, Church of the Desolate Kinswallower. That's the name I'm sticking with for now. If you're in the chat, feel free to drop other things in there. If other names, if you got if you got a better idea than I do. So their goal is to experimentation, unabated experimentation. What are they experimenting with? Let's see. Bob Mostel says they mostly use Inspiration Pad Pro. Tablesmith support dropped off, though Inspiration Pad Pro is not so supported anymore. Chartopia is probably the most active and only available online. I prefer having the app local. I agree. I'm getting kind of tired, particularly if stuff I'm going to use on an iDevice that I have to be online for, especially if I'm not uploading. Just give me some kind of sync. And even usually that I don't need because I'm not using it on multiple devices. Really not much difference among them when it comes down to it. Yeah, it's probably a matter of which one has an interface that speaks to you more and kind of has the functionality you want. Illuminous says, Church of the Hungry Mother. I like that one too. I might even like that more than mine. Curse you for bettering me, Illuminous. And let's see. So their immediate goal is experimentation, and they have a strange cult practice, which is murder. Yes. So for a cult that is worshiping a child eating monster, murder seems very appropriate for them. Yeah. So there you go. So if you need a cult to throw in there, feel free to use this one. You can roll up on this table, roll it up and go. Magic Places generator. All right. So I feel like I feel like I got about 18, 20, maybe I'll go a little bit longer since I got kind of sidetracked there with technical issues. So I'm wondering if I should be more. So I'm not even, I mean, look, to tell you about how much stuff is in this supplement, right? I am maybe a little bit less than halfway through if I can believe, or maybe I'm at halfway, I guess, if I can believe where that little Acrobat scroller bar thing is telling me. There's a lot of stuff. So here we have a Magical Places generator. Roman Lives. Oh, hi, Terrence. Nice of you joining us. The experimentation is for recipes for cooking kids. Yes. To serve man. To serve children, right? The cookbook. Yeah, that would totally make sense. Ovaltine Patrol just tuned in. What book is this? This is the D30 Sandbox Companion. If you look in the description, I believe I posted a link to it on Drive-Thru. It is a fine book by, who is it by now? Now I'm spacing out. They've got a long name. I'll just whip back up. By Richard J. LeBlanc Jr. of New Big Dragon Games Unlimited. And we've gone through a few things. I'm just going to scroll back to where we were. Here we go. Magic Places. Ovaltine Patrol, you're welcome. All right, so here, I'll go through this one a little bit, but I'm going to try to be a little bit more selective with some of the generators I go through just because I feel time starting to get away from me a little bit. So we got places, and we have a name and a boon, which I guess you roll twice. Do you roll once? Or do you roll twice? Maybe once. So if let's just roll one up, right? I like this going through and rolling some up. So, I roll 30. All right, so the place is a spire, a rock spire, and it is the Wishing Spire. And there is a 1 in 30 chance a wish, as the spell, made in presence of the location will come true. One attempt per character, regardless of number of visits. All right. So you can try, if you can get to the Wishing Spire, you can make a wish. Bob Mostel says they also have a D30 DM Companion. Yes, they do. Even though that book is the predecessor to this one, I will probably cover in the future because I have not covered it yet, but it is another very useful tome. So there we go. So you can get spires, they can be singing, they can be visions of the ancients, and you can get some boons. And that's really good. I like that stuff. And those are things that you can build into your lore, right? Someone says, oh, if you go to the Spire of Wishes or the Wishing Spire, right, you could maybe get this wish, but maybe it's in a really bad spot. So to get there, you have to, you have to navigate through obviously some dangers. And of course, there's it's a 1 in 30 chance, right? So it's only a 3.3% chance, but still it's better than nothing. So maybe it's something that your party might try to do. And maybe one of them will have their wish come true. Pilgrims generator. Don't often see pilgrims being generated. Quick determination of large pilgrim groups, including general party types and size, level, and number of accompanying clerics and fighters, in presence of any monks or magic users. And then there's levels of monks for monks and magic users may be generated by using a different table. Okay. So pilgrims are cool, right? You could think about these are groups you might meet on the road. Bob Mostel says the Toolbox and Ultimate Toolbox by AEG are pretty cool too. I'm not familiar with those. I don't think. I'll have to check them out. So I'm not going to go through the pilgrims, but if you're ever wondering, you're running into people on the road. Obviously, pilgrims, you get the sense of folks traveling to a religious destination. So you can play with that if you have such places in your campaign word. Bob Mostel says, insert bad John Wayne joke in here. Pilgrim. Yeah. I'm always saddened by the fact that he was kind of a Nazi sympathizer, and I think other things, because I enjoy actually a lot of John Wayne's work. The Quiet Man, just a great flick. A lot of fun. And I like, was it Rio Bravo? Another good one. Ultimate Toolbox is beefy. All right, I'll have to check it out. Road encounters. Quick generation of encounters along traveled roads. Hey, we can always use encounters along the roads. I'm not going to go through this, but I do like that they've split it up in terms of population density. So your King's Road that is very well traveled gets you different sorts of encounters, or at least different chances of different sorts of encounters than if you're on a desolate road, that's rarely traveled out in the middle of the boondocks. So you get a bunch of stuff in there, including markers and signs, which I think are great. And you can get some other types of things like remains or ambushes or, whatnot. So good stuff. Remains being humanoid remains. We get more stuff for road encounters. Oh, and you get some, even giving you a quick little treasure generator if you get attacked by something, what kind of stuff they have on them, which is cool. And then reactions. Hey, always down with reactions. And that reaction looks like it's pursuant to their morale too. So it's kind of it's sort of using the morale to help you generate their reaction, which is also a good thing. So good stuff. If you guys see something that you absolutely say I must go through in detail or generate one, let me know. Castle Keep Stronghold Generator 1, owner and patrol size / makeup. This is roll on this table, CK1. To determine the class / race of the castle / keep / stronghold owner. Roll on another table. I'm assuming it's going to be next door, or is it? Oh no, it's right on the same page. And index the column matching the owner's race or class. All right, so I'll just go through this one quick because I'm a sucker for castles and whatnot. All right, so I rolled a 10, so I would go to the owner. 10 is a level 12 magic user, so some kind of magic. If we're doing, let's just assume we're going by you know, the sort of trope of, you know, the wizard's tower is a level 12 magic user. I'm gonna roll again. I rolled a 15, so I got a magic user. 15 says he has 7 heavy footmen, a 3rd level fighter, and a 1st level magic user. So there you go. So he's got a small heavy footman force. Their captain's a 3rd level fighter, and potentially he's got a 1st level apprentice on hand as well. Right? So cool. So if I needed that, if I rolled a tower somewhere, I decide there's got to be somebody. Now I know who he is, how many folks are with him, and the main ones, you know who they are. Oops. And then we have some more stuff about it. So, okay, so we can see, so let's just say we don't know if it's a tower. Precisely, we're gonna roll randomly. I rolled a 2. That means it's a type 2 castle, keep, structure, type 2 structure, and then the size is class A. So type 2 means it's a round, straight tower. Okay, so it is a tower because it's a magic user. They're sticking with the tropes. So it is a round, straight tower that has 2 to 3 levels. And you can also, they also have it for dwarves and elves, halflings, and fighters / clerics. And then let's roll to see what it's made of. 24. Oh, it's in need of major repair. So it is crumbly. He's only, you know, so he hasn't taken care of his abode, which is a shame. And then we can generate some heraldry. For this, apparently you can create over 27,000 variants. I'll go ahead and create one for our wizard in his tower. Let's see. 19, so the division, okay, it's a per chevron. Type is 12 its type is rare. What does type rare mean? I'm not sure. Metal, color, rare. Anyway, so it's got carnation, skin tone, meaning worthwhile, ambition. Okay. And then I could add a charge maybe to this heraldry. And I got 21. I got a griffin, a rampant griffin. I really like those, but this is one where I would definitely, if I could find an online generator, I think I have found online heraldry generators just so I could put the graphics together. I'm well versed enough in products to be able to cut and grab those and paste them into something. But if I could get someone to do it for me, yeah, obviously nice. But again, right, you can generate some stuff here. And I suppose I could have rolled on each one of those things separately, but you get the idea. And then we get even more stuff for our heraldry. So if you want to get super into it, you can do that. We've got some backgrounds for our settlements. I kind of wonder if just from an organizational standpoint, it might have made sense to put the settlement stuff together since you might be rolling on a bunch of those at once. I'm not exactly sure about why you would split them up, but that is just me. I mean, it's not far away. It's just a couple of pages, but so you can get different government types. You can get how either how much they love or hate outsiders, right? How I don't know, paranoid is the word, how distrusting they are. And you can get from accepting down to indifferent or melancholy or pissed off with. So you get a lot of options there for you. You can get an idea of their economic state. You get their issues. There could be too many beggars or vagrants or drunks. It could be corrupt. And then, you know, prostitution or just waste, right? Because they're dumping all their waste in the streets. And then we can talk about how much of this is going on. Is it just minor or is it pervasive? And then nearby threats. What's going on in the area that might be threatening them, which is always great for setting up that, oh, hey, your party's reached this village. Roll a die. 12. There's a giant or giants. Won't you help us, please? Adventurers, please. Right? So Always good. I kind of like the idea of rolling on a nearby threat. Like, what is this village? If the party is often coming to these places, if you think about the A Team, or you think about, I don't know if anybody here is old enough to watch the old Bill Bixby Hulk shows, but there was, you always end up with walking in the town that has a problem that is waiting for somebody to help solve it. You can have that kind of setup here, right? They enter a town. What is the town dealing with? They're dealing with a pterodactyl. They're dealing with some goblins. They're dealing with zombies. Good. And then we have encounters, settlement encounters. And the goals can vary from just capturing them or trying to rob them for a multitude of reasons that you can roll on. Some of them can just be annoying. The annoying buffoon encounter. Always dig a nice buffoon encounter. Or you can have some fun as a GM. It's always fun to throw out some folks in the party's way that can't really do anything, but can just make their lives a little bit interesting for a small amount of time. So you've got that. You've got some celebrations and events if you want to have them come in. And I always like that stuff too. I like to roll on those things a lot. I should probably put together some things. I think I've always thought about it in terms of that Western shows like Bonanza, or it might have been Bonanza literally did that. They would say, meanwhile back at the ranch. And so the main guys are out doing something. And then, but back in town, the lesser characters, it might be the kids or the wife characters or the older folks who aren't on the cattle drive, aren't dealing with the main issue right there. Something else is happening. And I always like if the party is away from that town that they've been made their base of operations for a while, what happens when they're away, or what's happening when they come back. So I'll roll some dice and figure out how long have they been gone, and then essentially how long are they getting there just as this thing is happening, right before it's happening, or did they get there kind of right after it's happening, or if it happened. So those could be stuff from weddings, funerals, festivals, just all kinds of options you can throw in there, and it makes the settlements feel more lively. Again, it makes it feel more lived in and dynamic. And it gives you some ways to churn the plot. If it's a funeral, well, who died? And maybe it's somebody of importance. Maybe that changes something about the town. Or who got married, and what does that marriage mean for what's going on? Or if it's a festival coming on, what does this festival do? Is it a religious festival? And what might different cults and different religious elements might be, activating because of it? Eric Hanscom has a question. I can ignore it, but I won't, because I already looked. How do I deal with limits to selling loot in hamlet or small towns? Surely a thorp of 17 people isn't going to have enough gold to pay the PCs. Wow, and Bob Mostel says he's old enough to remember Kwai Chang Caine. Yeah, I can't. I obviously I've watched Kung Fu, but Kung Fu. I don't know what did they do years. I was born in the early 70s, so I was not. I can't say I was around. I think when Kwai Chang Caine was actually in. I watched it syndicated. But yeah, you got me. I think you got me beat, Bob Mostel. So back to Eric Hanscom's question. Yeah, so a lot of times there's right, there's a couple kinds of loot, right? There's your sort of coin loot that you're getting. So you're finding loose gold, silver, copper, whatever. So obviously the party doesn't have to sell that, they have it. Then you've got your I don't want to say artifacts, but you have what's the word I'm looking for? Items, and they might have cultural significance. Your antiques. Oh, this is an urn that's worth so much. This is some candlestick holders that are worth so much, etc. Those kinds of things that you can't immediately sell, I have them go through a process in my current game where they essentially appraise it, as Bob Mosel just said. You can barter it, right? You can trade it for something. Generally, in the game where they are right now, is the local lord, who is a viscount, will essentially buy them from them because he has an interest in antiquities. But those are things where you can create whole other adventures just about them finding people to sell this stuff to. Because you're right, if you're in some tiny little hamlet, no one needs, or people may want, solid gold candlesticks, but nobody can actually afford them. So what do you do with them? You can barter them. That's where you got to take them to a lord, somebody of power. They could be, if you wanted to deal and work in a sort of a lifestyle rating, right? What are the sort of living states of the party? Because a lot of times I like to think about, well, you might have a lot of money, but if you're presenting yourselves as paupers, that's how people are going to see you. If you want to present yourself like you're landed or you're gentry or you're unlanded gentry, then you need to, you need to act and look the part. Those kinds of things can be things that they can stock their home, mansion, apartments, whatever with, to give themselves that kind of upper crusty feel. So you have options, but it can also be that, hey, this is where you have to take it to a market town. This is where you may have to take it to a higher level lord. You got to go to a castle. You can use it as gifts. Hey, you want the local lord or someone to think better of you. Try to get yourself invited to a banquet, and then as gifts, you can present them with the tapestry that you found, right? That sort of thing. So you do have options, but you have to be creative with making sure your party has outlets, and your party has to be creative with also thinking themselves what outlets they have for things. Okay, I'm at 2 o'clock, so I don't want to do too much longer. So we got city guards, city watch, border patrols, right? So you want to generate some of those. You can generate those. Methods of torture and execution, if you want to go that route, you've got them from a brank, which is a metal cage-like mask. The victim's head is caged, and the brank is chained for public display. Sounds lovely, right? You've got your classic Iron Maidens. The lead sprinkler. It appears as a holy water sprinkler, molten metals poured into butt of handle, then rain over victim from the other end. Okay, that's... I'm not gonna read more. That's Grizzly. Hey, if you need some torture or execution methods, have at them. They're there for you. Settlement suppliers by the size of the settlement. So if you want to wonder if you have a thorp or a hamlet and you want to see what might be there, you can roll to figure out what kind of suppliers, what kind of vendors are in these hamlets, which I think is a very useful thing if you haven't considered that stuff up front and you need to sign your party's in a random kind of small village that you threw out there because it made sense, and suddenly go, oh, hey, do they have do they have an alchemist? And, you can roll and see if they do. So in a small thorp, there's a 1 in 1/3 chance, right? So a 1 in 10 chance on the D30 that there's an alchemist there. I would probably make that a lot less than there, but that's that's my game. You can update these numbers to suit. We got shop and shopkeeper info. Again, I'm speeding along because I feel like I'm running out of time, but it's got attitude, reaction modifiers. Ooh, for bartering. If your players love to barter, here you've got some bartering percentages for you. You got some key descriptors for the interior, availability and pricing for stock. I know a lot of folks like to try to vary kind of stuff off of the book, right? What is in the book. So here you could do that. And then even a particular reaction table for your shopkeepers. So good stuff there. All right, I'm going to roll a tavern name generator because why not? So first I'm going to roll for a combination. I rolled a 2, so that's, let's see, 2A and 3B. All right, so I got 1 descriptor and 1 noun/object. So let's see. So I rolled 18. So I get the gold or golden. Was it 2A and 3B? So gold or golden 6. The gold or golden monk. So the gold monk, the golden monk. There you go. I need a tavern. I've got a tavern. Easy peasy. Devious Dungeons painting. They did need some good torturing ideas. Not for the game, but never mind. Yep. Yes. Well, the lead sprinkler seems like a winner. I mean, it might. I don't know what the price of lead is these days and how to set that up, but yeah, that'll do you quite fine. Okay, now we named the tavern. We need some accommodations, features, reputation, and food. Hey, the food one's great, right? If you're at a loss for what kind of stuff might be there, I mean, granted, it's a little bit limited because you only have 30 things, but there's, you can go from venison to pork dumplings to liver sausage to beef rolls. Good stuff. Vaulted, you can say it's physical features, vaulted ceilings, obscure animal skeletons, known for quality wines or strange patrons or bizarre games. NPCs, class, race, sex, and level determination. Yep, so you can get all kinds of stuff there if you need to create some quickie NPCs that have classes on them. You can do that. And these look like Yeah, so it's a mix of 1E and OE classes. So you do have some kind of AD&D style thieves and not thieves, sorry, like monks or whatever, or I guess assassins. I think assassins, right? That wasn't in. I don't know if it was in any of like the Dragon magazines or anything, but you've got a mixture of your kind of classic classes with different ones if you want to use them, and so on and so forth. And we got some, you can just roll, basically get some arrays for their ability scores. And now we have inventory, and then magic items if they have any, their occupations if you want to give them occupations. So it could be, you know, some kind of merchant occupation, a trade occupation, a miscellaneous occupation, and then a temperament. I will, it's probably been a long time. I actually have a hireling generator, which it's not exactly like this, but it does generate similar things. I made it intentionally quirky. So you can check that if you want something that's kind of online. You could check that one out. I just threw it in the chat. If you click on the, so if you go there, by default, it does 50 of them. And then you can click on the names and it will pop up some details, including some weird stuff. I kind of came up with this kind of funky, what's kind of sign, this weird celestial signs are born under that, and that will kind of indicate some stuff about their character. But you can check that out. But this, obviously, if you don't want to be online, will do the trick just fine. All these. You need some nobles and some household personnel. We can roll those. You need a sage. Sages are always good. I feel like they're an underused resource in a lot of games. So you can roll up a sage if you want to say, oh, there's a sage in the library in the town that we had come up with earlier when we did the adventure generator. We've got that. More stuff about the sage, what kind of their specialties are. And then we get a nice chance of, hey, can they answer the question and to what degree? So we have a nice little table for that. This probably should have been closer to the other NPC stuff, but we have some physical traits. So we could talk about their body type, skin type, face type, eye color, and hair color. So we can get a barrel-chested with alabaster skin and a baby face. Their eyes are the color of amethyst and their hair is black. And then we can even roll for their hair length and facial hair if they want to have it. And we get some more NPC stuff, personas and behaviors, right? With what is their motivation? What is their inspiration? What is their personality? What is their quirk if they had one? What is a bad habit that they might have? And what is a burden that they might have? And then depending on the last two, the bad habits and the burdens, if you roll odd number, it's a mild bad habit. If you roll an even number, it's extreme. And the same thing, the burden is either occasional or constant, depending on whether you roll odd or even, respectively. And even more NPC stuff, backgrounds, eccentricities, and talents, what language they speak. And here we have a nice table. I like this one for recruiting henchmen. I like to make it a barter, a bit of a barter, kind of a role play encounter when they're recruiting henchmen. Usually it's not long. I don't make a whole necessarily scene out of it, maybe short little back and forth, depending on how they come up to it. How they, they put the offer to them and whatnot. So we got that stuff. More modifiers for recruitment and loyalty, which is always great. And then we get the index. So there we have it. And here's the text from the back. The D30 Sandbox Companion is the ideal right-hand man for the DM who wants to avoid his sandbox campaign running him. Whether starting an adventure from scratch, filling in the details of a campaign world, or just struggling to keep up with players, this compilation of D30-based mechanics, charts, and tables will support and simplify the role of the DM/GM at the tabletop. Inside these 30-something pages, you'll find a host of D30-based sandbox resources. And I'm not going to go through the including because we basically went through everything. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what things you would like me to cover next. There's stuff I want to kind of make a place to go through a lot of these different sandbox tools. I went through the ready reference sheets quite a while ago on the channel. Like I said, I don't really like to recommend them anymore just because of the current rights holders, and I just find that they're just more troubling personalities that I just prefer not to deal with. So I want to send folks to other directions. This is definitely one of them. As usual, if you like this, give me the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want. Have a great rest of your day. Sorry about the technical difficulties that I had to sort through earlier on. Hopefully I can figure out how not to have that happen again, because I think it's happened twice in a row now, which is troubling. I don't know if it's a day thing. I don't know if it's my router resetting. I don't know what it is. Hopefully it won't happen again. Anyhow, cheers. Game on, and I'll talk to everyone later.